Welcome back to another episode of Out of the Blank podcast. Gil is back again. Gil, I know we just talked, what was it, probably a couple months ago. Did an episode, very good episode. I always appreciate having you on because you're very, you have a different line. I think, like I said, you've made me change my perspective on the Dallas police when it comes to looking at this during their investigation. But I had a question for you, which was trusting eyewitness and ear witness testimony throughout the case. Because obviously there's certain things that are revealed by researchers who are able to get something through a video interview compared to when you're actually reading the documentation. I try and stick by the documentation, but what I've noticed through the FBI's documentation is that a lot of statements have been not altered, but their questioning was in a specific focus that kind of agreed with an already kind of set out line of this is how the assassination is going to go. So I wanted to get your thoughts on eyewitness and ear witness testimony. When do you trust it? Do you trust it?
Well, the way you trust it is if the witness has another witness, if there's more than one witness, and it's corroborating what they're saying is the same thing. You can trust that. You can trust those witnesses to be true. If the witness says something that's backed up by the physical evidence, you can trust it. Okay. The way the lone nutters do it, and the way the Warren Commission did it was if the witness had anything to add to Oswald's guilt, they were credible. If they had anything that didn't add to Oswald's guilt or questioned Oswald's guilt or added to his innocence, they were not credible. And that's the way they've handled it ever since. But that's not the real way you determine whether or not a witness is credible. The way if the witness, what the witness says is backed up by other witnesses or by the physical evidence, then you can believe that witness is true. Now, for instance, the doctors all say that they saw the same thing. They saw this big gigantic hole in the back of the president's head. That's not a shot from behind; it's a shot from the front. And so they have to cover that all up. So the Warren Commission's like all the witnesses, all the doctors were wrong. The autopsy prosectors were right. There was one little hole in the back. How the hell can you mistake a half-inch hole in the back of the head for a 5-inch gaping hole with bone missing and scalp missing? It's not a mistake you can make. So they're obviously here. They have an agenda. They're gonna ignore some witnesses. They're gonna not call some witnesses. Some of the witnesses were even the closest witnesses to the assassination were never ever called for their perceptions. And
Marilyn Zitzman, the one standing behind Zapruder on the pedestal that was holding him
William
still.
Newman and his wife Gail, they were never called. The other guy there, the guy with the little boy there, the father with the kid.
Oh,
I forget
Charles
his name.
Brem?
Brem. He was never called. He was never called as a witness. Why not? So, I mean, these people were the closest ones to Kennedy when he was killed, and yet they were never called to give their perceptions on what happened. And even some of the witnesses there said they saw a piece of the back of the president's head blow off. That's not a shot from behind. That's a shot from the front. That shot hit him here, almost in the temple here, up in the hairline, and blew out the back of his head. I saw in a summary by, I forget her name now, but she said that she believed that the shot came from the left in the front, not from the picket fence, because the picket fence would have hit him here, the side of the head. Right? She believed that the shot came from. She thought it came from the overpass, or in the south side of the knoll, and south side of the plaza, and it hit him here, and it just blew out the back of his head. One of the doctors, I think it was the Dr. Kemp Clark, said that he thought it was a tangential shot, which means that it was just barely went through. You know what I mean? It was almost like, it looks like it tore the skin, the scalp, and the scalp flapped down, and it just blew the back of the head off. But the Zapruder film doesn't show that. So is the film been doctored? Who knows? I don't know. I can't say. But there's evidence that that the film that we see today, the film that's made public, that Grodin made public in 1975, is not the original film. It's not a copy of the original film, and it may have been changed. There's evidence of that, and there's more and more evidence of that coming forward from people who were in the technical part of it, that worked for Kodak and stuff, and worked at NPIC, saying that these films are not the same films. just like the pictures, the autopsy photographs. We know those are fake. We know those are fake because the people that processed the film said those are not the pictures that I processed. Those are not the film. Those are not the pictures I developed. So I mean, you know, there's an agenda here. They tried to hide the fact that the president had been shot, possibly from. I'm not saying he wasn't shot from behind, but I'm saying he was shot from the front as well. He may have been shot from two different directions, and that's what blew his head apart. Um, so there's a lot going on there that they didn't do. So when you're talking about them setting up a narrative, yes, that's what they did. They interviewed certain witnesses. They intimidated witnesses. They got them to change their testimony. Some people thought the shots came from this direction, and then after they read the Warren report, well, maybe they were wrong. Maybe they came from over there. You know, so and then that'll happen. That'll happen like that. People will change their minds, even though they won't believe what they see with their own two eyes. They'll go with the crowd. They'll believe that. Now, there was a test that was done by the CIA. They put 18 people in a room. One person was off the street, okay? The other two were CIA employees. 17 CIA employees were all told that they were going to be shown a triangle. And when they were shown the triangle, they would say, when they were asked what they were looking at, they would say a square, okay? They were going to test this 18th person. That was the whole point. It was about mind control. It was all part of this MK Ultra thing. So they showed the 17, they got them all 18 in the room. They show them the triangle. They go through the 17, they all say they see a square. They get to the 18th guy, the guy off the street. Now he thinks that all of these people are off the street. He doesn't know they're CIA employees. He doesn't want to be different than the crowd. So what does he say? He says he's seeing a square. He knew doggone well he was looking at a triangle, but he said it was a square. So people can be influenced by other people. And what they say, they don't want to be thought of crazy or whatever. They can disbelieve their own two eyes from what they see. So, yes, the witnesses, whether or not they're credible, depends on what the other witnesses say, but also backed up by the physical evidence. That's how you determine who's credible and who isn't.
How do you trust a witness statement? Like, obviously, without influencing your own bias into it. But if we believe that, which I do believe that, and I think there's evidence to support that statements were altered, whether it's specific questions, such as like whenever someone describes something, whether they were standing on the overpass or they saw or heard a shot from a certain direction, everything had to be north, south, east, or west of the Texas School Book Depository. It wasn't, it was like that. And then obviously in every FBI questioning at the very last part was, I've never seen Lee Harvey Oswald before. So they asked him, have you ever been associated with Lee Harvey Oswald? But through people's statements and testimonies, there has been, well, I thought the shots came from here, but later it turns out it must have been coming from the Texas School Book Depository. And it was just because, yeah, that's what everyone was saying that it was coming from. So then eventually it's just like you were saying, people start going, yeah, that's where I guess it must have came from. So I must have heard something wrong. But when it comes to statement alteration, I mean, do you have any thoughts about statement alteration? Because obviously it messes with the historical record of like when you're looking up a witness. Did they really say that, or is it like S.M. Holland and the other railroad workers that stated they said something else to the FBI?
Yeah, because they they read to them what they said in the report, what the FBI said they said, and they said, I never said that. I told the FBI that I saw smoke coming from the behind the picket fence under the trees. And then when you look at the FBI report, it says they either didn't know which direction it came from, or they thought the shots came from the direction of the Texas School Book Depository. So again, how do you trust the record? You can't. So now you have to go back and trust what the witness is saying. The witness is saying, I didn't say that. Same thing with, I don't know if you remember Julia Ann Mercer. Julia Ann Mercer told Jim Garrison that, I did not make these statements in this that's attributed to me. I picked out the guy she said they said she couldn't pick out the guy she saw behind the wheel of the pickup truck, and she said it was either Jack Ruby or somebody else. There were two that she was.
Well, she identified him in a photograph too, and Ruby's name was written on the back of the photograph.
Yeah, and another thing was that she said that when she gave her affidavit, there was no woman present. And the woman that signed it on the bottom that her signature was not her signature on the affidavit. So she didn't ever sign it. So again, all of this stuff the witnesses are saying make you believe that there's something else going on here. Okay. And even in the movie JFK, the Garrison character played by Kevin Costner, he's saying, I'm a former FBI agent. I find it's very hard to believe that they would falsify these documents like this, what you're saying, but this is what they did because they had an agenda. And their agenda was that Oswald was the sole assassin, that he had no accomplices who were still at large, and the evidence was such that he would have been convicted at trial. This was their agenda. And so this wasn't really an investigation to get to the truth. This was a collection of evidence against one suspect, that suspect being Lee Harvey Oswald. And anything that didn't add to his guilt, they just discounted it. Now, there was a guy, and I don't remember his name, but I got the document somewhere on the computer. There was a guy who went in 1961. This is like in the spring of 61. I think it was April of 61. Went to Dallas. Yeah, I think he was from California. When he came back from Dallas, he told his wife, he said, if Kennedy ever goes to Dallas, they're going to kill him. Now, keep in mind, this is April 1961 or the spring of 61 anyways. Oswald isn't even in the country. How the hell does this guy know that Kennedy's going to get killed if he's going to Dallas? If Oswald's in Russia, got nothing. You know what I'm saying? Oswald's got nothing to do with any of this. It was the atmosphere in Dallas. They hated Kennedy so much. He was warned not to go there. So, I mean, if you take the president, if you're in the Secret Service and you want to get rid of the president, you take him to some place where it's politically dangerous for him to go. Remove his protection and let the nuts do what they got to do. This is exactly what they did to Donald Trump a few weeks ago. They saw the guy. They saw the guy an hour before he took the shot. Why did they let the president step out there on the podium? Why did they do that? If they had a security threat out in the audience, why did they let the president come out on the stage? Never should have done that. But this is what they did to Kennedy. They led him into an ambush. And when the shooting started, the driver slowed the car down instead of speeding it up. I mean, there's just so many of these things that you say to yourself, this can't be just all coincidence. You know what I mean? It can't be coincidence. This had to have been a planned assassination to remove the president from office. And I've always said, I believe, some people call it a coup d'etat. I like to think of it as a counter coup. To me, the coup was Kennedy's election in 1960. That was the coup. He wasn't supposed to win that election. That was the coup. What this was an attempt, and a successful attempt, to take the power of the government, take the power of the presidency, and give it back to the people who had it before 1960. See, Lyndon Johnson had a lot of power before 1960. He was the Senate Majority Leader, and he was the vice president. So this is just taking the presidency and moving it back, giving it the power back to the people who had it before Kennedy was elected. That's what I believe this was. This was a political murder.
I'm not going to ask you to rank these in order, but where would you deem the most trustworthy documentation of a witness's statements compared to what would be the least? You have the Warren Commission, Dallas Police Department, the FBI, and then personal papers, letters, and things of that sort. And then sometimes, I mean, I would add in articles from certain reporters or certain newspapers that were at the time reporting maybe something a little bit different than the official narrative. It might seem like a conspiracy article, but to be honest, doing a lot of the witness clips, everything that I have to really go off of based on the number of people that were questioned and were asked, and then based on the number of people that weren't, a lot of those names that people were in Dealey Plaza that weren't asked gave an interview to some researcher or something like that, which credit to the research community for being on top of that when that was going on.
Yeah. I think that probably the most credible evidence is the testimony. That, to me, that when you start to look at the testimony and what the witnesses were saying to the Warren Commission, most of the witnesses were deposed. They didn't go to Washington and actually sit in front of the commissioners and give testimony. A lot of them were deposed. They sent the lawyers out around the country, and they were giving testimony in courthouses or wherever they lived. The lawyers would go to them. So I think the testimony is very important as far as I'm concerned, because the testimony is, in many cases, is in conflict with what the report says. See, the report came out first before the 26 volumes. So everybody read the report and said, no, this is a slam dunk. Oswald was guilty. When you start to read the actual testimony and what the witnesses said, it's not such a slam dunk after all, because they didn't say this and they didn't say that. And the Warren Commission lied about some things that they shouldn't have lied about, that the witnesses said that they didn't say. For instance, let's say Johnny Brewer. They said the Warren Commission in its report said that Brewer saw Oswald pull the gun in the theater. When Brewer was asked in his testimony, if he said he didn't see where the gun came from. He saw the gun, but he didn't see where the gun came from. Which brings us back to what you were talking about before, police procedures and stuff like that. McDonald goes up to Oswald. Why is he reaching in his pants, in his waistband of his pants? Why is he doing that? I mean, if it's me and all the guy didn't do was buy a ticket, I walk up to him and say, "Can I see your ticket stub?" Because when you buy a ticket for the theater, they tear it in half, they keep half, and they give you the other half. So you should have the stub from the ticket. If he purchased a ticket outside, he should have the stub on his person. So I would ask him to see his ticket stub. And if he couldn't produce that, then I'd go and search him. But I wouldn't search him starting with his waistband. I start searching from the top up. That's the way you search somebody.
Do you know how he got that cut on his face? He said he got it from the firing mechanism of the gun, but I don't believe that. I think he must have got it when he fell into the seats.
It could well have been. It could have been from what he
How was he not interviewed by the Warren Commission?
when they pulled the gun up. He claims that the hammer, I guess it was, cut him on the way up when they were
No,
pulling
it's literally the whole side of his
Oh yeah, the
face.
whole side.
The
Okay,
Dallas
that's right.
police acted weird when that happened. They took like that's the only place I could find his statement besides one little news article. Was that they immediately took his statement, said this is probably going to be used when there's an investigation, and they took photos of him, like made sure they got the whole cut on his face and everything to show. Like, but I don't think he ever gave a statement to the Warren Commission, at least not one that I could find or one that they've released. But that's the same thing with Marilyn Zitzman, who was behind Zapruder on the pedestal. She said she gave one to the Warren Commission, but I cannot find it, and it's not in any of their released information or documents.
Yeah, I haven't looked for it, so I don't know. But it's very strange. Why, if you're going to search somebody, why would you go for their waistband first? You know, to me, that says that you've got something. You're trying to plant a weapon on the guy. You know, why would you go for his waist? If you're going to search somebody, you start from the top down. You know, and it doesn't make sense to me how this police officer goes up and searches the guy starting with his waistband. I don't know. I don't get it. But
What about certain witnesses that were used by the Warren Commission when they know they could have been fact checked, like Howard Brennan? Like obviously that man flipped his. I mean, he got better memory as time went on, and then he couldn't even identify Oswald. And they were like, "Hey, don't worry about it. Just we're not going to act like this happened or anything like that." But they could have easily been fact checked with documentation and things to show that obviously like how we can do now that they were Howard Brennan was not a good witness, but they didn't care. They kept that in there.
yeah, they said that in the report that they didn't come to the conclusion that Oswald killed solely on Brennan because they couldn't depend on him. And Brennan's eyesight was bad. Uh, I'm not sure he was even looking at the window when the shots were fired, because if you look at some of the videos,
He
they
wasn't where they
claim,
said they were.
yeah, they claim that he wasn't even looking. He was looking at the president when the shots were fired. So, um, but he didn't identify Oswald when he went to the lineup. He didn't identify Oswald. He couldn't identify Oswald, and so he wasn't a very good witness. And then he had bad eyesight, and but there were other witnesses there that said that they described the guy in the window who was not Oswald, and they described a weapon that was not the man Caccano, and yet those people they went out of their way to discredit them, like Arnold Rowland. They went out of his way to discredit him. His wife said he had he had a big imagination, and they played that up, but it was only his imagination having to do with, I think it was his ego, something that he do. Like if he did something, he'd make a big deal out of it. You know what I mean? It's just he'd make it bigger than what it was.
Drama queen.
Yeah, a drama queen, exactly. And so it doesn't mean he didn't see what he said he saw. That doesn't mean that that's not credible, but that's what the way they tried to play it. So yeah, and a lot of witnesses. Well, a good example of witnesses changing their mind was Orville Nix when he was interviewed by Mark Lane. He said, Mark Lane said to him, "Where did you think the shots were fired?" He said, "Well, I thought the shots were fired come from the picket fence." He says, "And where do you think the shots come from now?" He says, "Well, obviously the shots came from the Texas School Book Depository." He says, "Why do you say that?" He says, "Because that's what the Warren Commission said, and I believe the Warren Commission." So people's minds were changed. They had the doubt of what they saw. Other people had information and they were afraid to come forward because they were afraid of the Dallas police. They
Do you
were afraid
think
of.
that? Well, I agree with that because I think even with with the statements from the Miss Lopez, she talked about how that well, her statements. Like I said, these accounts they're very. Some of them are very wild, which makes me wonder. Like, is everyone seeing the same event? Like, I don't know how everyone could be in the same location and see so many things going on unless there's like the Umbrella Man and stuff like that. That seems very, very not planted, but yeah, planted. Just seems like something's going on there that just doesn't add up. Um, but with Miss Lopez, she talked about seeing Jack Ruby hand Oswald a gun in front of the Texas School Book Depository. And when they were called, why didn't you say anything to the Warren Commission or you ever called on the, we don't want to talk to the Dallas police. Like that's a statement they gave is we do not like the Dallas police. And I'm like,
They
that's
were
really
afraid of the
weird.
Dallas police, and so were the lawyers. So were the defense lawyers. They were afraid of the Dallas police too, because when the ACLU showed up to talk to Oswald, the Dallas police tried to dissuade them, and they kind of like, okay, they went to the midnight press conference. They heard him with his own mouth say, "I wish someone would come forward and give me legal assistance." Gregory Olds, the head of the ACLU, um, he heard Nichols, the lawyer that they allowed to go in. He wasn't a criminal lawyer. He was a civil lawyer. H. Lewis Nichols. They allowed him to go in and talk to Oswald. Well, Nichols gave a report to the reporters, and I've got the video where Nichols says that Oswald asked for John App from New York as a lawyer, or anybody from the ACLU. He heard that. He heard that whole interview. And Old said, I told the Warren Commission, I wish I was a little bit more stronger forceful to get to see him, because they were afraid. But the ACLU was afraid of the Dallas police, and they didn't want to lock horns with them. What they should have done was they should have said, look, pal, I want to see him, and I want to see him now, or I'm going to sue the city of Dallas. I'm going to file a lawsuit on his behalf against the city of Dallas because you're violating his constitutional rights. Now, that's what they should have done, but they didn't have the balls to do that. So they accepted the fact that Oswald didn't want a lawyer, and it makes me sick because these low nutters turn around and say, well, he was telling the cops he didn't want a lawyer, but publicly he was saying he wanted a lawyer. Does that even make sense? Why the hell would you tell the cops that you don't want a lawyer and then turn around and say publicly in front of the reporters, I emphatically deny these charges? I don't know what dispatches you people have been given, but I emphatically deny these charges. I have not committed any acts of violence against anybody. I have nothing against anybody. Why would you say that and then turn around to the cops and say, nah, I don't want a lawyer?
Well, it wasn't the original narrative that Oswald did it for the fame because he was a nobody, but then he's claiming he's a patsy and all these.
Yeah. Why didn't he say, yeah, I killed the son of a bitch and this is why I did it? Right? I mean, if he had a motive, wouldn't he say it? Wouldn't he want, if he, here he is, he's going to be famous. He's going to be famous. He's going to make millions of dollars off books and stuff like that he's going to write. People are going to want to hear his story, why he killed the president, all that stuff. He's going to be set for life, or at least his family will be. And yet he's saying, no, I never did that. You people are crazy. I don't believe they're liars. They're setting me up. I'm being railroaded. This is a guy who wants fame. Now, granted, not people who are guilty will say they're not guilty, and people that doesn't make if they deny it, that doesn't make them guilty, right? And you have to look at the body language and the way he's saying it. This is a guy that's really pissed. He's really pissed off because he's being railroaded for something he didn't want to. He didn't do. I mean, how would you feel if you were blamed for something you didn't do? You wouldn't like it, and that's the situation he's in. So I don't believe he did kill him. I don't believe it. I believe the whole case against him is fake. I believe all the documentation has been faked. And hey, that's just the way I see it. But other people, they will believe whatever the government tells them. I personally, I ask the question. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I don't see conspiracies under every rock. Every time something happens, I'm not blaming the government. But in this case, there is a serious problem with the evidence in this case. And if people can't see it, well, then I guess it's just going to take a lawyer to see it, because that's why lawyers like Mark Lane, Jim Garrison, people like that, they read this and they say, this is bullshit. This isn't right. How can they do this? How can you conduct police lineups without the defendant's lawyer there? How can you do that? The lawyer's there to make sure that the lineups are done fairly. So he doesn't get the lawyer. They don't let him have the lawyer. Then they turn around and they conduct the police lineups however they want. They put guys in there with blonde hair, dressed all kinds of differently, put dark-skinned people in there. They put a Mexican in there, put teenagers in there. They put everybody in there. None of these fillers match the description of the witnesses who say the guy who killed Tippett. How is this? Then they handcuff Oswald to the two detectives. They handcuff Oswald to the two detectives to make him look like he's the prisoner between the two detectives. I mean, who are they going to pick? Even Helen Markham, as wacky as she was, she hesitated. She says, at first I wasn't sure. That's not a positive identification. Positive identification is when they bring the guys in, that's the guy. That's the guy right there. I'll never forget his face. That's the guy that shot the police officer. Helen Markham hesitated, and she said she was under pressure. Police kept asking her. The room was full of cops, and they kept asking her, which one, which one, which one? There's only one to pick.
Do you believe she was under pressure as well because her son was involved in gang activity?
Hey, you want to know something? I think her son was involved in Tippett's murder.
Oh shit. Okay, I never heard that from you.
No, but that's what I think. I think that's why she was so hysterical. That she saw, well, if it wasn't her son, it was somebody she knew from the neighborhood. She saw somebody she knew, and that's why she was hysterical. I think personally, I think it could have been her son. It could very well have been her son because he was out on parole. If he gets caught with a gun in his pocket by the cops, he's going back to jail. And I've got 3 suspects in that murder. I got him. I got the other 2 kids that were friends there. Jimmy, what the hell was his name? You see, my mind is shot. But there were 3 of them that used to hang around together. William Smith, Jimmy, it'll come to me later on. But and James Markham. And Markham was banned. Get this now, Markham had a motive to kill a cop because Markham was banned from the bowling alley. There was a bowling alley.
Damn. How the hell do you get banned from a bowling alley?
Well, the kids used to hang out over there, and the gangs used to hang out over there. But James Markham was a big troublemaker, so he got banned from there, from the bowling alley. He couldn't hang around there anymore. As a matter of fact, the kids were hanging around all kinds of different businesses. They were hanging around at Austin's Barbecue, and JD.
That's where Tippett moonlighted as a cop.
Exactly, on Friday and Saturday nights. Now, the FBI never went to question Austin's Barbecue about James Markham. Was Markham hanging around there? Was there some kind of a problem between Markham and Tippett? Because Markham was banned. Get this, Markham was banned from the bowling alley, and the guy who got him banned was a part-time employee who worked full-time for the Dallas police. He was a Dallas cop. How do you like that one?
Maybe the problem would have been solved if they pay their Dallas cops a little bit more. Keep them a little bit honest.
So here's James Markham with a hair across his ass against the Dallas cops for getting him banned from the bowling alley. He can't hang with his pals. Maybe he went over and hung over at the barbecue shop, and maybe, who knows? Maybe he had a run in with Tippett. I don't know. But But the thing is that that there were other people, young people too, in that neighborhood that could very well have killed J.D. Tippit. Oswald had no motive to kill Tippit.
Well, you mentioned good evidence about the lineup, but when it comes to proper procedure of Dallas police protocol or just police protocol in general, I want to bring it to a question before the assassination happened. The security on the motorcade route. We don't, I mean, you can mention the motorcycle cops if you want, but just the people that were standing there. Like, I have a testimony from Joe Murphy, who was on the overpass. He was told, and in his statement, he said that his job was making sure that no one was on the overpass. Unless they were one of the railroad workers that were allowed to be up there because they were performing work on a building next door or something like that. And I think there was, I mean, they said it's 11. I've only found like 9 people that gave statements about it. That's SM Holland and the others. But in his Warren Commission testimony, he doesn't mention this, but in a police or an investigated affidavit that came later, he did mention this, which was that at 10:30 or 10:40, he saw a pickup truck with 3 construction workers in it that was broke down. He gave one of them a ride to the National whatever bank building and to go pick up another truck to get this vehicle moved out of the way. At any point, if you are requested or instructed to protect the presidential motorcade by having a certain area covered, why would you leave an hour and a half before the president? That doesn't happen. That's not normal, right? Like, that's not just me with a red flag going off.
Once you secure your post, you don't leave it. You don't leave it. And you know what? You talk about this truck. This may well have been the same truck that Julia Ann Mercer saw on Elm Street, because it's right around the same time. It's the green Ford pickup truck.
Yeah.
And it belongs to these guys that are supposed to be working at the bank, like you said. They're supposed to be doing some kind of work at one of the banks, and the truck broke down or something. She claims that she saw somebody take a rifle case out of the back of that truck. Now, again, the FBI.
Joe Murphy's mentioned that in his statement. He talked about that someone did go to the back of the truck and did pull something out, but he never saw anything. So
yeah, well, of course they're not going to see it.
But I figured he would have been like, yeah, that was Jack Ruby, because a lot of the cops knew Jack Ruby, and they were more than happy to mention that they saw him somewhere.
Might have been Ruby. It might have been someone who looked like Ruby, because when you see the pictures of the guy that they say is Jack Ruby in Dealey Plaza, that's not Ruby. I don't know who it is, but it's not Ruby. But if this is the same guy who handed Oswald a handgun, think about this. If he's handing Oswald a handgun in Dealey Plaza, that means the handgun doesn't belong to Oswald. Right?
Or is it possible they hand him a bunk gun?
Well, the point I'm trying to make is that if he's handing Oswald a gun in Dealey Plaza, the handgun that Oswald gets arrested with in the Texas Theater, that means that Oswald didn't order that gun. That gun came from that guy.
Yeah.
So that means the whole thing about Oswald ordering the handgun is bullshit. Well, anyways, they never did prove that Oswald received that handgun. I'll get into that when I go into my list.
Yeah, I just got one more for you, and then we'll cut into the meat and potatoes of this. I already know we're a good chunk in here, but I love where it's going. I have to ask, when it comes to the witnesses that came forward later or the witnesses that were deterred from testifying at all, do you believe that it was fear? And do you believe that it was because the number of people that started dying in weird circumstances before the, obviously, I don't know, just because they had some certain information, but even later with the HSCA, there's names that before they were testifying ended up dying in mysterious circumstances.
I do. I'm not going to say that all of the deaths were mysterious circumstances. I won't say that. I won't go that far. But I will say that by making this a story, and Penn Jones was the one who started this. He
Forgive
printed
my
this.
grief.
He printed this. People started to read it, and he printed it, I think, in his newspaper too, the Midlothian
Mirror.
I think he put it in there too. People started reading this, and they got scared, because when you think about it, people are being killed, some of them even in their own homes. How are they finding out where these people live? Through the official channels. They have to be, right? Either the FBI or the Dallas police. They get their phone numbers, they get their addresses, they get where they. So these people are all dying mysterious death. I think that this, and don't get me wrong. I love Penn Jones. I love his work. He's done some great things to try to get to the truth in this. But I think this is a mistake he made. He did more to harm the truth by printing this because he scared a lot of people off that otherwise would have come forward with information that would have been vital in this case. But again, that's only my opinion. I think that I'm not saying that all of these deaths were mysterious or shady, but for people to think that they were, that, again, another reason why to be afraid of the authorities. That's just my opinion.
And how much weight do you put into authors and researchers that came and interviewed people? I kind of asked you it a little bit before, but I mean more on the fact of like obviously we all have our own personal biases of where we want this type of questioning to go. Maybe certain questions weren't asked just because certain people weren't focused in those areas. But Mark Lane, I have a problem with some of his work, but then I also appreciate the interviews that he did do. Vince Palomaro and then William Law as well too have done great work interviewing people and having that footage out there. But like doing the witness clips, it's so difficult because we don't have photographs of people. We don't have certain things where I can't even identify. They were there, they gave a statement, but we have no photographs of them to be able to identify. So it's kind of like piecing apart. And I want to bring it to a bigger question of the historical record. How do we remember what's accurate and what's not distorted? This is where I want people to think. Because if you look at the damage that was done by the Warren Commission, the FBI, and investigations that came later, they still kind of skewed the correct information or the information that is uncovered by researchers, which makes it difficult for any newer generation to get interested in. That's why we're fighting with questions like James Files today. The driver did it. I had one person mention, oh, well, a bunch of police officers smelled smoke, so that doesn't come from the sixth floor. I was like, I agree with you on the smelling smoke, but that's not police officers. That is a senator, and his name is Yarborough. And they're like, "Oh, you're right." I was like, "Yeah, it was one guy that said it."
And he wasn't the only one. There were other witnesses who
Who?
said that they, I believe, I don't know if it was Nellie Connolly or if it was the mayor of Dallas's wife. I'm not sure. They smelled gun smoke.
I was surprised at the number of people that were in, like how many cars were in the motorcade. I keep coming up with like all these cars. I'm like, man, you don't see that from some of the photos. You kind of seems like maybe a max of 4 cars.
When you look at the motorcades, the other motorcades that Kennedy had besides Dallas, the like in the videos you'll see the press rides in a flatbed truck in front of the president's limousine. Okay, they weren't there in Dallas. The president's limousine is flanked on the side by motorcycles, or the agents are riding on the back of the car. That didn't happen in Dallas. There was a general that sat in the front seat between the two agents in the limousine. He wasn't there in Dallas. All of these last minute changes were made at Love Field the morning of the assassination, last minute changes where people were all moved out of the way. They were all moved out of the line of fire, and Kennedy was fired on, I believe, from the front. That's the reason why they were taken out of the way, so that they wouldn't get hit accidentally. This was just, again, this is the Secret Service. And then when the shots start firing, the guy driving the car slows down. Why do you slow down? You hear something, you look back, and it shows in the Zapruder film. He looked back twice. He didn't look back once.
Twice.
He looked back twice. He looked back. He saw Connolly had been hit. He saw Kennedy grabbing his throat. He came forward again. Then he slowed the car down. And then he looked back again the second time, and he kept looking back until Kennedy was hitting the head. And once Kennedy was hitting the head, then he took.
I got a lot of problems with the Secret Service. If you ever read Youngblood's testimony, or what he talked about, it's Herschel Jacks, his statement. He talks about what Youngblood said. So when the shots ring off, Youngblood says, "What was that?" And then he starts hopping into the back seat apparently to cover. I don't think he ever really covered. Maybe he sat close to Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, but I don't think he ever fully got on top of them like they said. But then he asks when they're driving off and going under the underpass, he asks, "How far to the Trade Mart?" And Herschel Jack's like, "We're not going to the Trade Mart. We're going to Parkland Hospital." Like, it's just a dumb question. Why would you think you're still going to the Trade Mart after shots were just fired upon your presidential motorcade?
Yeah. Yeah, the Secret Service. And according to the Dallas cops who were at Love Field, all of these last minute changes were made by Johnson's Secret Service people. They were told by Johnson's Secret Service people. And the guy who was in charge of that detail was Rufus Youngblood.
Mm,
He was the one who was in charge of Johnson's Secret Service detail. He was Johnson's guy on the Secret Service.
I know that. D all right. Do you want to get into some of the stuff you had planned that you wanted to talk about? I know you said you had a list of 50.
It's almost 50 things that should be true if Oswald was guilty. Okay, if Oswald's the guy who killed President Kennedy and J.D. Tippit, these truths should be, and they're not. All right, the first one, the rifle found on the sixth floor would have been 36 inches, because that's the rifle that was ordered, 36-inch rifle. That was the description in the book. So if Oswald's guilty, that rifle on the sixth floor should be 36 inches. That's the rifle he ordered.
What did it come out to be? Like 34?
40.2.
Oh, that's 4 inch difference.
4 inch difference. Yeah, it's the 36-inch rifle is called a troop special, and the 40-inch rifle is called a short rifle. They're two
And
different kinds of rifles.
and the paper bag was 38.
38.
So you would have saw 2 inches of the rifle barrel sticking out of the.
In theory, yeah. But they claim that the rifle was disassembled, and the disassemble was 34 inches.
Okay.
So that way it would fit in the 38-inch in the bag. My argument is that the cops made the bag on the afternoon of the assassination, and they made it for a 38-inch rifle because that's what they thought they had. They didn't know that they had gotten a 40-inch rifle.
Isn't there a witness statement that talked about there was an issue with the Dallas police finding that paper bag up there?
Oh yeah, that was never up there, because when they took the crime scene photographs, it would have been there. It would have had it. I'll get to that. The rifle found on the sixth floor would have had bottom sling mounts, because that's what the rifle in the backyard photographs has. It has bottom sling mounts,
Is
and
this
that's
number
what the
two?
rifle. This is number two.
Okay. You got to give me the numbers before you read them off just so
All
I can
right,
keep
number
track.
two is what should have had bottom sling mounts, and that was the one that they ordered. That was in the order blank. 36-inch rifle with bottom sling mounts. This was a 40-inch rifle with side sling mounts. All right. Number three is the money order for the rifle would have been purchased at a time when Oswald was not at work. When you look at his worksheet for that day, the 12th of March, his whole 8 hours is accounted for. Now, the lone nutters argue, well, that, the worksheets, according to the guy that owned the company, they weren't that accurate. Well, that doesn't mean that all of his minutes are accounted for. So you're telling me he's charging one customer, because he worked for different customers. He did jobs for different customers. So you're telling me he's charging customers for time that he's spending down at the post office ordering a rifle? Did they allow him to do that? No, of course not.
How difficult is it? Like for me, I never got this, which was they couldn't identify if it was curtain rods or whatever that was in Oswald's under his arm that he was carrying into the TSPD. A lot of people are saying it's a rifle. I haven't found a witness that really saw. I don't think anybody really saw him carrying anything but Beale Frazier, at least from what I can find. But if you notice, there's another testimony about a guy that brought in a rifle for him and his son that he was going to give his son as a Christmas gift and was showing around the TSPD. Now, everybody could identify that, I guess, because maybe he's shown it around and stuff like that. But I feel like you would know for a fact if you saw anything that it was even in the shape of a rifle being brought into the building.
Yeah, that was Warren Castner. 2 days before the assassination, he brings two rifles into the building. One's supposedly a 20 gauge shot, 20 gauge. I think it's a 20 gauge rifle for his son for a Christmas gift, and the other one was he called it a Mauser.
Oh, 7.75 Mauser.
It was a 30-06. Oh, don't get me going on that. 30-odd. It was a 30-06. Forget the name of the company. It was in Connecticut. They come from Connecticut. A 30-06 rifle that he saw, a deer rifle that he liked. Now, the rifle that was described by Arnold Roland that he saw in the 6.4, I said earlier he had seen a rifle that was not the depository rifle. He said that it was a 30-06. And he recognized it because his father-in-law has one just like it. So it was a 30-06 deer rifle. It had a big scope on it, not the small scope like you see on the Mainland Cockano. This was a huge scope. And he said it was a foreign-made rifle. Now, they claim that this guy's rifle was made in Connecticut. I forget the name of the company. I don't think they make them anymore. But the at the time, the most accurate rifle that was being converted at the time, the most foreign accurate rifle that was being converted at the time to a 30-06 was the get this now 7.65 Argentine Mauser. 7.65 Argentine Mauser, the 98 model, was a really accurate weapon. And they were converting those at the time to 30-06 and selling them as deer rifles. Now I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there because it just seems like such a coincidence that this guy has a 30-06 Mauser, and they're converting them to, and and the other guy says he sees a 7.65 Mauser in the building that could have been converted. This was a 30-06, and they were converting those rifles at the time. And I'm putting two and two together, and I'm saying maybe this is this guy's rifle. Maybe he brought them in the building to leave them there to to so that somebody could use them later on, 2 days later.
I put weight into that just because if you look at Truly in his Warren Commission testimony when he was asked about that, he said that this guy brought in, he didn't think it was for nefarious purposes. I don't necessarily think it's for nefarious purpose either, but he also talked about how he never touched the rifle. And then literally a page down, he talked about picking up and looking through the scope. And then there's other people that talked about holding it as well too. So then for me, it's like it's very normal for them to see a rifle and have it. Why would Oswald even try and hide bringing in a rifle into work if it's that normal to have a rifle in your workplace?
Well, do you remember the report that they had of the Dallas police officers, the uniform officers, on Wednesday, on the same day, who claimed that behind the picket fence they saw guys with a rifle out there in the parking lot, and they looked like they were taking target practice. They were aiming it towards the
Oh yeah,
plaza
yeah.
and stuff. And so when the cruiser turned around and came back, they were gone. Well, I mean, it's the same day that this guy brings two rifles into the building. I mean, you start putting this together and you're saying, wait a minute, it's got to be something here. But the Warren Commission and the FBI never asked him to take possession of the rifle. They never testified it. They never did anything with it. They never examined it. They never looked at to see if it said 7.65 Mauser on it. They never did anything. Now, he had an alibi that day. He wasn't in the building. He had an alibi that day. He had dinner or lunch with a professor at North Texas State University. North Texas State University was a hotbed of anti-Kennedy activity. They had a group there that were planning. Their words were they were going to rub Kennedy's dick in the dirt. That was their word. That they were going to, when Kennedy came down, there was going to be problems in the motorcade. And so they sent the Dallas cops sent their intelligence guys up to North Texas State University. That was in Denton, Texas, in the town of Denton. And they went up there and they told them, you will not come into the city because if we see you in the city on Friday, we're going to arrest you right on the spot. Now, so the report says that the students up there said, well, we're not going to the city. You don't have to worry about that. That was just a blowing off steam. We didn't really mean that. We're not going to the city. But I think what happened was the cops went up there and said, you will not come into the city because we'll arrest you right on the spot. Now, it would seem you can look at this two ways. Either the cops are doing their job and they're making it more secure for the president, or they've got their own plan to kill the president and they don't want these guys screwing it up. So they're telling them, you stay the hell out of the city or we're going to arrest you. There's two ways to look at it. I mean, it could go either way. I'm not sure which way I want to go on that.
About to say another difficulty where it's like conflicting with the Warren Commission is that like if it was Oswald did it right and it was wrapped up within 48 hours without eliminating the possibility of a getaway driver and all that, it was officially Oswald did it. That's all. Why did the FBI continue investigating it way after the fact? They're still investigating claims and threats and weird letters that are being sent. There was a letter in a woman's testimony talked about she wrote a letter to her uncle who worked for the Federal Reserve at the time, who they both shared a dispassionate taste for Kennedy, and stated it saying, did you do it? Congratulations. The day that Kennedy was killed. And she said it was a joke in bad taste. I was like, yeah, but the FBI is interviewing these people in 64 and in 65, looking at investigative claims of people that could have been potential shooters or conspirators. I'm like, if it's Oswald, then why the hell are you still investigating?
Hmm. Well, you can ask another question along that line too. Is the FBI came out with their report on the assassination on December 5th, 1963. That was their commission document 1. The FBI report on the assassination, December 5th, 1963. They hadn't even interviewed all the witnesses yet, but they already come to a conclusion on Oswald's guilt. How can you do that? How can you do that? The FBI summary report, December 5th, 1963, 2 weeks after the president's dead. You've solved this murder in 2 weeks. My God, you haven't even talked to all the witnesses. Yeah, the Warren Commission comes up with an outline on January 11th, 1964, naming Oswald as President Kennedy's assassin. They haven't even heard from one witness yet. They haven't seen one piece of evidence. They're already got a light. Well, this is what we got to prove. Oswald is Kennedy's assassin. Oswald killed Tippit. They got it all figured out. They haven't even heard from anybody yet. It's a bullshit. It's a frame job. That's what it is. Now, whether they were framing him because they thought Castro killed Kennedy and they didn't want a war or whatever their motive was, I don't know. I'm more leaning to the fact that they killed Kennedy because they wanted him out of office. It's a political murder. That's my view. Okay, but you talk about Roy Truly before. You said something about Roy Truly. Roy Truly was with the police officer when he went up the stairs in the back of the building. And in his original, the police officer Baker, in his original affidavit, he said he encountered a man on the 3rd or 4th floor, and the guy was wearing a light-colored jacket. Well, one of the witnesses who said they saw a gunman up on the 6th floor, I forget her name, the woman, she said the guy was wearing a light-colored jacket. That's one of the shooters. And what does Roy Truly tell him? He says, no, he works here. Roy Truly was no fan of Kennedy. You read Death of a President, William Manchester. He mentions that Roy Truly hated Kennedy. So what's stopping Roy Truly from letting him, yeah, you want to shoot him? Come on, I'll let you in the building. Those rifles, they could have planted rifles in that building. Those rifles could have been there for days. They could have put Brown in there after hours. Nobody had to see him bringing those rifles. And they could have been taken out later. Anyways, okay, well, let me go on with this thing because I digress. The order of blank, that was number 3. The money order would have been bought at a time when Oswald was not at, but it also would have been mailed at a time when Oswald was not at work. According to the postmark on the envelope, he was at work. That's number 4. Number 5, the money order would have had more than just a stamp for deposit on it. It would have had a stamp from other financial institutions on it because somebody's got to pay it. Somebody got to know who gets paid from this, right? But it doesn't. It just has a stamp for deposit.
Well, that's where the FBI informant Harry Holmes comes in, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think Holmes is the one that set this whole gun thing up. I think he was responsible for this. I think it all started back in the summer of '63 while Oswald was in New Orleans. And I don't want to get off track.
Well, I think it's where the Dodd Commission comes in. So that's investigating firearm sales to people with like communist backgrounds. I think that's when Holmes would have been investigating Oswald and checking out his mail and things of that sort.
They knew what he was doing. They knew what he was doing. They were well aware of it. The FBI was well aware of it. He was getting communist literature and stuff. Everybody knew about it.
That's what Jesse Curry stated. He was like, usually the FBI lets us know when someone with this background comes in there.
Yeah, I think the FBI knew. I think the FBI knew, and I think the Dallas cops knew too. I think so. I think the Dallas cops lied when they said, "Oh, we didn't know he was in the city," and the FBI did. And that made the FBI look terrible. Hoover went through the freaking roof on that.
That's why I've changed my perspective on Jesse Curry because Hoover attacked him.
Oh, Curry lied like a son of a bitch. He lied about a lot of things, and not only him, but his detectives too. They lied about a lot of things. They lied about the police lineups. They said, no, all 4 of them were handcuffed together. No, they weren't.
Well, Jesse Curry thought that lying for Hoover and all that would get him some of his guys into the FBI and get himself some credit. But then Hoover backed out on that because he was pissed off at Jesse Curry for making statements to the press.
And Curry was the guy who was responsible for transferring Oswald when he did. He never should have transferred Oswald. They should have transferred him in the middle of the night.
Look, we accept his faults because he became a conspiracy theorist later.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. We got number 6. There would have been proof Oswald received the weapons. Persons at the post office and RE Express office would have been identified. There would have been proof that Oswald received the weapons. Again, like I said, you mentioned earlier, somebody saw a man, they claimed Jack Ruby, hand Oswald the handgun. There's no evidence that Oswald ever received that handgun at the REA Express. The documents that they used to try to prove it was documents that were from Seaport Traders. That was Seaport Traders' copies of the REA Express documents. But those documents didn't tell the whole story. They didn't have Oswald's signature on them. They didn't have anything about shipping charges. What they shipped the handgun for free. There were COD charges on there, but nothing for shipping. Shipping charges were supposed to be paid when he picked it up. So who picked it up? What if it was picked up by somebody with a badge? Let's say a postal inspector. What if the postal inspector, because they put the card in the post office box, and then Oswald apparently gets the card, a notification, and goes and gets it. But you think that they would remember REA Express if Oswald picked that gun up? Of course they'd remember. REA Express records would have been used instead of the Seaport Traders copies. Yeah, that's right. Someone from REA Express would have been required to give testimony. They never brought anybody from REA Express. They never even interviewed anybody. Number 9, Part 3 of the post office box application for box 2915 would not have been destroyed in violation of postal regulations. If Oswald was guilty, they would have kept that third part and it would have had A. Hirdell on there. Number 10, witnesses who saw the package Oswald took to work that morning, meaning Yul Frazier and his sister, would have described it as being over 3 feet long. It's 38 inches long. They said, no, it was 27. Jack Doherty, the guy who saw Oswald come into the building that morning. Jack Doherty would have seen Oswald enter the building that morning with a package. He testified that Oswald had nothing in his hands. Nothing. He said, are you sure? He says, I'm positive. Number 12, the paper gun sack would have been present in the crime scene photos. Oswald was guilty. If this is, and the evidence is legitimate, the paper gun sack should be in the crime scene photos. It wasn't. Paper and tape used to make this is 13 now. The paper and tape used to make the gun sack would not have matched the paper and tape that was in the shipping room on the afternoon of November 22nd, because it would have been used up by then. Number 14, Oswald's fingerprints would have been all over the gun sack. Not just the palm, this part of the palm print and a finger. How do you carry a rifle like this? How can you carry a rifle? You can't carry a rifle like that. Number 15, the disassembled rifle would have left scratches on the inside of the gun sack. When the FBI examined it, they said there were no markings at all from that rifle or any other rifle. Number 16, the 3 spent shells on the 6th floor would have been placed in a sealed envelope. They weren't. The envelope was open.
Now, who was that found the shells? That Sheriff Boone? Deputy Boone?
No, Boone found the rifle. It was the other guy. Damn, what's his name? Let me take a look.
Weitzman?
No, Weitzman.
Seymour Weitzman?
Rifle shells. Let's see. I'll tell you in a second. Let me get the Luke Mooney.
Mooney. Okay.
Mooney found them. Sheriff Deputy Luke Mooney is the one who found the shells. And he asked Mooney to identify the shells during his testimony. He couldn't. He couldn't identify the shells presently in evidence as the shells he found. Couldn't identify them. Okay. So, and they were put in an open envelope. So, what does that mean? That means that they got chipped. They have time to change them. If those were shells from a 7.65 Mauser, they had time to change them. Let's see. 17. Interrogation of suspect Oswald would have ceased once he had requested a lawyer, and he requested a lawyer at the time of his arrest in the theater. So they had no right to question him after that point. Number 18, once his lawyer was present, the Dallas police would have recorded the interrogation sessions on tape or had a court stenographer present to record them. Number 19, the FBI would have found Oswald's prints on the rifle when they examined it on 11/23. They didn't find any fingerprints. Number 20, the FBI would have discovered Oswald's palm print on the rifle when they examined it on 11/23. They didn't find the palm print either. They didn't find out about the palm print until after Oswald was dead on the 24th, when Henry Wade announced it to the world. Oh, by the way, didn't I tell you that there was a palm print on the rifle? There was Oswald's palm print on the rifle. Really? Nobody knew this. Not even the FBI. Now the FBI's, what the hell is he talking about? There was no palm print on that rifle. We looked at it yesterday and there was no palm print on that rifle.
Now, we don't have a chain of custody on the rifle because I think Sebastian Latona didn't bring it into evidence until way later in the day, or it was the next morning.
Yeah, it was the next morning. It was, I think he claims it was 7 a.m. on 7:30 a.m. on the 23rd.
So he's just riding around with it in his car the whole time, just not.
Oh, no, I think Vincent Drain brought it into the lab that night, but I don't know what they did with it after that. After Drain dropped it off at the FBI lab, I don't know what happened to it. But still, I mean, if there was a print on there, now their argument is that the Lieutenant Day lifted the print off so completely that it wasn't on the rifle, which is bullshit, because the whole rifle was dusted with fingerprint dust. Okay, you take fingerprint dust, take a fingerprint, you put it on a blackboard, and I show this on my website. You put a fingerprint on a blackboard and then dust the blackboard for fingerprints, and the fingerprint shows up, but there's all powder all around it from the loose powder where you dusted around it. Okay, now once you put the tape on the print and you pull it up, it pulls up all that loose powder around it too. So you can tell if a print has been lifted. The FBI said there was never a print lifted on the rifle where he said he found the print. So, well, and guess this, the night after Oswald was murdered, the night that Oswald was murdered, that night, they show up to the funeral parlor and they fingerprint Oswald post-mortem.
I think there's a video of that, isn't there?
Yeah, I got a video of it on my YouTube. They fingerprint him post-mortem to prove to the FBI headquarters in Washington that it's actually him that's dead. Now, and I think that has something to do with, I don't want to get into it because it's a long story, the Lincoln assassination and whether or not the guy they caught in the barn was really John Wilkes Booth.
Hey, they dug up Kennedy again because they said water was leaking into the casket. I was like, how the fuck would you know that? Think about it. You got to dig up the casket to know if there's water leaking in it.
That's right. Where were we? Number 21. Bus driver Cecil McWaters would have identified Oswald as the man he gave the bus transfer to. Now, he did it first, but then he recanted. He said, no, that wasn't him. It was the kid that was sitting behind him.
Now, when they take a bus pass, they rip the bus pass, right?
They punch it.
They punch it?
Yep. Yeah, they have a punch on. Every driver has a punch in his head. Each driver has his own design of a punch. It leaves a punch on it.
Because Oswald's bus pass wasn't punched.
Yeah, it was punched by McWaters, so they say.
It's a perfectly intact bus pass, though. There's not a hole or anything.
No, let me take a look at it. I'm pretty sure it was punched by McWaters.
Because a lot of people say the bus encounter wasn't real, that he wasn't on the bus.
I don't think it was. I think it's bullshit. I think the whole thing is
many manipulated evidence.
Yeah. Same thing with the cab ride. I don't think it was. I don't think it was either.
Well, you don't believe William Whaley?
No, I don't believe Whaley. Whaley was the guy who said that Oswald wore both his jackets that day. He wore both his jackets. They showed him the two jackets of Oswald, the gray one and the blue one. They asked him which one was he wearing. He couldn't make up his mind. He says he was wearing them both.
No wonder the guy's broke. He's buying too many fucking jackets.
Yeah. Amazing. Oh, no, it's punched. It's punched at location 23 Lakewood. It's kind of like a half moon, quarter moon punch, the one that they used, bus driver, Friday, November 22nd. Yeah, it was punched at 23 Lakewood. What amazes me is that when he's encountered later on in the day and asked to view Oswald at a lineup. There was, I'm sorry, the next day. The Dallas police tell him where he picked the guy up. How did they know that? It's not on the bus pass. But anyways, he recanted from his identification of Oswald as the guy he gave the pass to. Oswald would have had taxi driver William Whaley drop him off at his rooming house. Why would he drop him off 5 blocks away? Bullets removed from Officer Tippett's body would have matched the shells found at the murder scene. Oswald had killed Tippett.
It was automatic ammunition, right?
Yeah, well, they claimed that it was automatic at the time. That would have been 25. The spent shells would have been described by police in their broadcast as 38 specials fired from a revolver. Number 24, Officer J.M. Poe would have found his initials on the shells in evidence. 26, the initials of persons not in the chain of custody would not be on the spent 38 shells. There were initials on there. I don't know if people know that, but there were initials on those shells, markings on those shells of people who were not in the chain of custody. It's amazing. Number 27, the unfired 38 rounds in bus transfer would have been found on Oswald's person the first time he was searched.
Yeah.
Not the third time. They found it the third time they searched him.
Now, I'll give weight to you can miss a bus pass, but I think Bart Camp makes a great point that they also found 6 revolver bullets on him.
Yeah.
So either someone lied about patting him down
five
the
in his
first time.
pocket. There were 5 in his pocket, and there were 6 in the gun. There were 11 total.
So either someone lied about patting him down the first time, or they just planted that evidence on
This is
him.
the third time. The third time they got him.
Yeah.
They pat him down when he got to Fritz's office. Somebody else patted him down when he was arrested. And then
That's what I'm saying. They missed it the 2 times. So either someone's lying about patting him down, or they planted that evidence on the 3rd time.
Yeah, that's what I think happened. I think they planted I don't think he ever had the shells, because you got 5 shells in your pocket, whether it's your shirt or your pants pocket, they're going to be jingling around. You can hear them.
Like change.
I mean, it's ridiculous. Yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous. How can you not know? Initials of persons. Okay, I got that one. 27, the unfired. Okay, 28. Helen Markham would have never hesitated in identifying Oswald as the man she saw Tippett. Right? She would have said, "That's the guy." No hesitation. That's the guy. Number 29, Ted Calloway would never ask Domingo Benavides which way the shooter went. Oswald was guilty, and his encounter with the guy on Patton Ave was true. Why did he ask Domingo Benavides which way the shooter went? Number 30, the identity of the officer who found the jacket under the Oldsmobile would have been revealed, and he would have been required to identify the jacket in evidence as the jacket he found. 31, the Dallas police would not have staged lineups without Oswald's lawyer present. 32, the fillers in the police lineups would have resembled either Oswald or the witnesses' descriptions of the man they saw. 33, Sergeant Lavelle would never have told Calloway and Ginyard that Tippett's killer was in the lineup before they viewed it. You don't do that. What you do is you say, okay, I'm going to show you a lineup of 4 men. If you see the guy that you saw coming down Patton Ave with the gun, if he's in that lineup, you tell me what number he is. If he's not there, just tell me he's not there. That's what you tell him. You don't tell him, well, if we can nail him on killing this cop, we think he's the same one who killed the president. You don't tell them that. You don't even tell them the guy's in the lineup. You let them tell you the guy's in the lineup. That's the right way to do it. But this is the way they did it. The Dallas cops, 34, the Dallas doctors' recollections of the president's wounds would not have been discounted. Number 35, the autopsy x-rays and photographs would have been matched each other. Photographs and x-rays don't match. 36, the x-rays and photographs would have depicted the same wounds to the president's head as described in the autopsy report, which it doesn't. The trees and bushes in the backyard photographs, 37. This is interesting. The trees and bushes in the backyard photographs would have had no leaves on them if they were taken in March. That's interesting.
Most people always point out the shadows, but I never even thought about looking at the trees.
Yeah, the trees and bushes. They had a guy, I forget his name now, John something or other. It's on my website. But he went back like it was 2 or 3 years later to the same backyard with the same bushes and the same trees on the same date, March 31st or whatever it was. They said it was March 30th. And took a picture, the shadows and everything. And the shadows look pretty close that they could be, but the bushes are completely different. And so I'm thinking that those photographs were really taken in September or October of that year, not so much in March. And that's what I think when the guns were ordered. I believe that the guns were ordered from a magazine out of Adrian Alba's garage in New Orleans. That's what I think the weapons were ordered. And those weapons were ordered because Oswald had walked into Carlos Bringier's store and tried to find out about this training camp and what these Cubans were up to as far as training. What they were doing was the CIA was training assassination squads to kill Kennedy, and they were sending them around the country. That's what they were doing. And I think that Oswald was part of that to try to find out where those were. He was working for the FBI. That's what I believe. And he was working for the FBI against the CIA. And I think that's why the CIA set him up. But anyways, okay. But let's go back. Trees and bushes. 38 CE 399 would have been identified by the persons who handled the stretcher bullet as the bullet they handled. They didn't. That bullet's chain of custody doesn't begin until it gets to the FBI lab in El Matad. It's amazing. 39 CE 399 would have had blood or clothing fibers on it from either victim. When it was examined by the FBI, it had nothing. 40, authorities would have found the source or sources where Oswald purchased his 38 special and 6.5 ammunition. They would have found out the store where he got it. Well, they found out that no store in Dallas sold that 6.5 ammunition because it was military ammunition. Only two gun dealers dealt with that stuff. And both of them, of course, denied that they ever sold anything to Oswald. And they probably were telling the truth because I believe that whole thing was just a stage. 41, no motorcycle officers would have been allowed to ride alongside the limo and would not have been told to remain behind the rear wheels and hold their position, quote, no matter what happens. That's what they were told, end quote. Number 42, the general who usually rode in the front seat between the Secret Service agents would have been in the front seat. 43, the press would have been on the back of a flatbed truck in front of the limo. 44, the limo driver would not have slowed the limo down when the shooting started. 45, the Secret Service agents would not have been up all night drinking in Fort Worth Bar against regulations, and if not fired, would have at least been reprimanded for doing so. 46, the president's body would have arrived at Bethesda in the same casket it left in Dallas in. 47, Oswald would not have been killed in the Dallas police station. They would have done a better job taking care of the prisoner. There would have been no conflicts in the evidence. There would have been no problems with the chain of custody. People not connected with the case, like Dean Rusk and Ann Boudreau, would never be called to testify. Now, Ann Boudreau was called to testify as to Oswald's mentality when he was 2.5 years old. She never babysat Oswald. She knew a woman who babysat Oswald and said he was a terror at 2.5 years old. Okay, she never.
Most kids are terrors at 2.5 years old.
Yeah, I mean, so what? So he's the presidential assassin because he threw a shit fit when he was 2.5 years old. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Okay, authorities would never have altered witness statements and affidavits or threatened and harassed witnesses. You don't have to do that if the case is true. You don't have to do that. The commission would never have ignored test results that disproved its conclusions, like the wounds test and the rifle tests for speed and accuracy. Things like this, that evidence would not be missing, like the president's brain. Witnesses like Charles Brehm and William Newman would not have been ignored. Jack Ruby's mother's dental records would never have been an exhibit. Do you believe that? They actually had Jack Ruby's mother's dental records as an exhibit. Jim Garrison said it the best. He said, just to show you how cosmically irrelevant the Warren Commission was, he said they had Jack Ruby's mother's dental records as an exhibit. He says, even if Ruby had intended to bite Oswald to death, that would not have been relevant. His mother's right. It's ridiculous. And finally, everything would have added up. Each piece of evidence would have served to corroborate another. There'd be no questions. And yet you can go through every single piece of evidence in this case, and there are questions surrounding it. The case against Oswald was not legitimate. It was fake. The evidence of that lies in the way the authorities handled Oswald, the way they handled the evidence, and the way they handled the witnesses. And that's about it. They arrested the wrong guy for the crime and tampered with the evidence to make it look like he was guilty. And finally, my last sentence is John Kennedy was killed by his enemies, not Oswald. And again, I question whether or not J.D. Tippit was killed by Oswald. because, like I said, there were a lot of bad dudes out there. There were a lot of young bad kids, and back in those days, they did things like that. I mean, I remember one time. I don't remember it, but I was told by one of my cousins. My uncle was a pot cop in a local city here, and he had a problem with a gang at the park. He used to hang around the park, and my uncle had a problem with them one night. He went out to confront the gang and to tell them to break it up and get lost. And of course, he was all by himself. And I guess they grabbed him. They tried to take his gun away from him and something. A few days later, he had a heart attack. And several days after that, he died. Uh, and and I don't know. So here's here's an example of people not being afraid, especially these young. They were young punks, they called them back then, being afraid to beat up a cop or do something to put his life in danger. They had no problem doing that. So I don't see this as any different. I wouldn't be surprised if it was James Markham that killed Tippit. Well, yeah, let me tell you a little story. A few months after all of this happens, Dallas police get a tip that James Markham broke into this place. It was like I don't know, sort of like a little like the little league ball fields. They have these concession stands. This was a concession stand at a park, and stole some cigarettes and some other stuff. Markham was a small time hood.
Like a small stall.
Yeah, he was a small time hood. They got a tip the Dallas cops that Markham was the one that broke in, and he had the stuff at his mother's house. So the Dallas cops go to Helen Markham's house. They knock on the door, right? Now, this is their story. This is the police's story. Then I'll tell you James Markham's story. Police story is when they knocked on the door, she opened the door, Helen Markham. Cops announced who they were. She opened the door. James Markham runs into the bedroom and he dives out a second story
Oh shit, I've heard
window
this before.
into the driveway. Yeah, onto the driveway. Now, James Markham's story is that the cops came after him, grabbed him, took him into the bedroom. They shut the door and they threw him out the window. Now, I'm saying to myself, wouldn't this be something? They could have killed the guy because there was there was cement down there. Wouldn't this be a typical cop reaction to somebody who they found out killed one of their own? To grab this guy and throw him out a window and hopefully he's freaking dead. Son of a bitch, kill him once and for all. And then he's not a problem to anybody anymore. And so, and then Helen Markham, after he's out there hurt, of course they call for the ambulance and stuff. Helen Markham tells the cops where the cigarettes are hidden. So she knew that her son had stolen something. Her son had stolen something, and she never called the cops on him. She never said to him, "Hey, you can't keep that shit in my house. I don't care where you keep it, but if it's stolen, it don't belong here. I don't want it in my house." She never did that. So if she's not willing to turn him in for that, would she turn him in if she saw him kill the cop? Of course not. Of course not. So I'm wondering, and I have no evidence to prove it, but I'm wondering if James Markham was the one who really killed the cop. I don't know. I don't know, but it's interesting. When you start to look at all of these different things and you start to put them together and stuff, it's really interesting because you say to yourself, gee, and then of course you have the timing issue with the Tippit murder where Oswald could not possibly have gotten to the Tippit murder scene because his cleaning lady, the housekeeper, Earlene Roberts, saw him outside at the bus stop a few minutes after 1 o'clock. A few minutes after 1 o'clock, Helen Markham's leaving her apartment, and the FBI measures it takes her 2.5 minutes to get to the corner. So at the same time she's leaving her apartment, Oswald is across the street at a bus stop, almost a mile away. So I don't care how fast he can run. There's no way he can run in 2.5 minutes. He can run that 1 mile. There's no way. There's no way he could get to that scene at that time. So, and then they argue about, well, he was really, according to the transcripts and the dicta belt, Tippit was killed at 1:15 or 1:16. But hey, you can change documents. You can change the transcript.
Or just not release certain dispatch logs to be able to tell what time.
Yeah, because you have all of these different times. You have Scoggins saying that he called his dispatcher. The dispatcher's record shows that Scoggins called for the ambulance at 1:23, right? If the ambulance had been there, the ambulance said it took them only a minute to get there when they got the call. The ambulance signed off, I think, according to the transcript, at 1:18. So if the ambulance signs off at 1:18, why is Scoggins calling for the ambulance 5 minutes later if it's already been there? Follow me? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I mean they haven't released certain aspects of the dispatch logs, but I don't know why. It's Murray Jackson that was the dispatch officer, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, there were
Why
two of them.
Why he sent Tippett there? He said he did in his testimony, and then he goes on to say, "I think Tippett might have been shot because the way he approaches his suspects. He always has his hand on his gun butt." And I go, well, that would explain he stopped him through the right front vent window if he's got this weird kind of way of interacting with people. But then I go, I mean, why would you send somebody that you know has a complicated personality when arresting individuals, whether it's his PTSD from serving in the war or whatever that Joe McBride brings up? But it just didn't make sense to me of his dispatch.
And if you look at Tippett's police record, as far as his accomplishments, his personnel record, he was reprimanded, I think, at least once for not calling in when he gets out of the car. And he didn't do that this time. He did the same thing. He had a bad habit of getting out of the car and not calling the dispatch saying what's he got and where he is. So the first thing they did when they found out that a police officer had been shot, they thought it was Menzel. Menzel was the guy whose area that was. That wasn't Tippett's area. So the first thing they do is they call Tippett because they don't know Tippett's in that area because that was the way he did things. He just did things on the fly. He didn't the proper procedure would have been for him to call in, tell him what he's got, where his location is, and to ask for the backup. That would have been the norm. Unless, like I said, he had an encounter with this guy someplace else, and he saw him on the street, and he said, "I'm going to get this little son of a bitch." Well, I mean, it could be. It could have had something to do with something that happened at the barbecue place. We don't know because they never investigated that. They never took a look at that, and so who knows what happened? But it's unfortunate for him and for his family that he was killed, regardless of what his role in it was. It's unfortunate for his family. I feel bad for them that they lost a police officer. Having family members of my own being police officers and having done the job myself in the past, I can understand the loss. But I wonder if it was connected to his other job, because like I told you, that other police officer that got Markham banned, he had a part-time job too. And I'm wondering if something happened here where it was related to that barbecue place, but we'll never know.
I got a
Then,
few more questions for you here, kind of on hitting up on a wrapping point. But I want to ask you about the investigations, the Warren Commission, HSCA, Church Committee, even though a little bit of the Rockefeller. But do you think that a focused investigation on the witnesses should have been what they focused on if they were really going to do an investigation? Just plotting the number of people that were there in Dealey Plaza and then taking statements from them subsequent afterwards, whether they saw something or not. Because there's plenty of people in the Warren Commission testimonies that didn't see anything. But there's just an important factor to the historical record where I felt like a panel should have been put together that investigated certain witnesses or people, just plotting them where they're at in Dealey Plaza. I mean, we have Craig Ciccone, Craig Ciccone, who has his master list of Dealey Plaza witnesses, and then others that have plotted certain areas of people that were identified as being in Dealey Plaza. But we don't have like a government investigation, which I know if you're suspecting the government of being involved in it, they're probably not going to want to do something like that. But I feel like just for the historical record, if we could have had an investigation into plotting where the witnesses were, do you think that would have been important?
yeah, I mean, especially like the witnesses that people that worked in the Texas School Book Depository. You have people that work there, and all of the FBI reports say the exact same thing word for word. I did not see Lee Harvey Oswald on November 22nd, 1963, and I did not see any strangers in the building on that date. And it's pretty much when you start to read their testimony, all of these secretaries and stuff, they all say the same. They're all worded the same thing. They're all worded the same way. It's almost like it was they just added it on there. So, yeah, I think that what they should have done was they should have taken some of these witnesses and just not taken their statements and trusted the FBI. I think they should have. But this is what they should have done. This is what they would have done in a normal investigation. They would have said, okay, well, we're going to bring these people in and what they have to say. But who knows what they had to say, because you can't trust what the FBI said. As far as the House Select Committee on Assassinations, I was very disappointed with them, because I think what they should have done is what I'm doing, which is examine the evidence in the case and come to a conclusion that the FBI's investigation was flawed. They did say it was seriously flawed. The Warren Commission's case was seriously flawed, but they didn't go beyond that. They tried to solve it. They tried to blame. They made the same mistake the Warren Commission did. The Warren Commission started with a conclusion that Oswald was guilty, and it all worked backwards. The House Select Committee concluded that organized crime was involved and worked backwards. The Cuban exile, the CIA angle of it was never examined. And when they tried to investigate some of these Cuban exiles, they were stopped from doing that. And finally, Bob Tannenbaum said, I can't take this bullshit anymore. You're not going to I want to do an investigation where wherever it leads, that's where we're going. Okay. I don't want to do it like this. And he felt that it was David Atlee Phillips was lying under oath. He wanted them to penalize him somehow for that. And in order to do that, it took a vote of the whole House of Representatives had to vote on whether or not this witness would be penalized for perjury. And so it was a mess. But the House Select Committee should have investigated the original investigation, but they didn't do that. All they did is they went off on their own, and then they got involved with his acoustics and this technical acoustic stuff, and it's controversial, and people are saying that yes, it is a shot from the knoll. No, it's not a shot from the knoll, and the House Select Committee even hid some information that they found out about the president's head wound. They hid that from and they said, oh, the Dallas doctors agreed with the autopsy guys, and they didn't. They didn't say that. They all said the same thing, that they found that the hole was in the back of the head, and they didn't say that. They said that one said the doctors were wrong, the autopsy prospectors were correct, and all it does is just continues to confuse people, and it just keeps hiding the truth that the president had been shot from the front. Somewhere in the front of the car, the president was shot. Now, I don't believe it was the limo driver, but I believe from someplace in the front, the president was shot, probably from the left front, and that's what blew the back of his head off. Now, it could have come from the ground, storm drain down in the ground. It could have come from the storm drain up.
You can analyze every aspect of that footage. That drain does not coordinate with the shots or the reactions.
You're talking about the one on the right side, on Kennedy's side. You're talking about the one on Kennedy's side.
I don't even want to talk about a storm drain in general, because it's going to lead.
The storm drain on the other side is a different story.
It's going to lead into my next question. When it comes to the record and the younger generations picking up the pieces, there's a massive amount of information out there, a massive amount, any theory, all this type of stuff. It's very important that people are able to get documentation in certain things, depending on whatever theory you believe. But do you have hope for the younger generation to pick up the pieces or spark up an interest into it?
No.
Damn. All right.
No. As long as the CIA won't release all of his files, no. No, the truth will never be known.
Shit, I thought I'd give you a little bit of hope or something at some
No,
point.
no. It is possible. It is what this murder can what this murder proved is that it is possible to get away with murder. It is possible, and we shouldn't be shocked about it because there are plenty of murders out there that are committed every year that end up being cold cases because they can never have enough. They never have enough evidence to charge anybody. We had one locally where a bunch of hookers were killed, found on the side of the road some years back, and they never found the guy who did it. And nobody was ever brought to justice for that. There were like I can't remember how many there were. There were maybe a dozen or so hookers that were found. Their bodies were found on the side of the highway. Most of them on highways on the side of the road. You think to yourself, how the hell could somebody dump a body on a highway and not be seen? But there you go. They were killed, and they were all killed the same way, strangulation. But their bodies had been there for a while, and it just
Oh,
so happened. So it just had been so that it would just people had get out of a car to take a leak or something, and all of a sudden they see something strange in the woods, and they go over and look at it, and boom, it's a dead body. But they were all local hookers from the local city, and they never found the guy that did it.
they produced a whole movie about it. It's called Stand By Me.
Yeah, they had no, they did produce a special on it.
I'm
It's called
sure
The Highway Killings, and
we're getting a little off the topic. Hold on.
yeah. But I mean, what I'm saying, the point I'm trying to make is that murders sometimes don't get solved. That's the point I'm trying to make. And the thing is this: if you got people covering it up, if you don't have the credible people investigating this, and the crime is covered up, and the evidence is tampered with, and everything, and they're hiding their incompetence, um, like the Secret Service taking the president's body at gunpoint, right? And now they could very well say, yeah, okay, we transferred the body into another casket because we were afraid that the Dallas authorities were going to come screaming up to Air Force One and want the body back and take the casket from us. They could have said that, and it would have made sense, right? They could have said that, and it would have made perfect sense. Okay, because they want to give up the body. Maybe the Kennedy group is the one that says, hey, look, we brought him down here. You blew his freaking brains out. Now you want to carve him up into pieces? No, we're not going to allow that. We're taking him back to Washington. That would have made perfect sense. You could have said, yeah, I can understand why they would do that. But that's not they didn't do that. They just took the body out of there and they took it back to Washington. Why? Because the Secret Service knew that they had set the president up and they wanted to hide the fact. So they had to get the body out of there. They didn't want them to find out that he'd been shot from two different directions. So get him the hell out of there.
Gil,
At least
where can
that's
people
the way I
find your
see it.
links, Gil?
That's the way I look at it. You can you can see my website is gil-jesus.com. That's my website. It's called Was Lee Harvey Oswald Really Guilty? You can also do a search on any search engine, Gil Jesus JFK, and it'll pop up there somewhere on one of those pages. And I got a YouTube page, JFK 63 Conspiracy, and also I have my website. I have another YouTube channel, just Gil Jesus, if you want to take a look at some of my videos on YouTube. And that's it. I mean, it is what it is. We'll
I'll make
talk
sure.
about the storm. We'll talk about the storm drain some
No,
other time.
no, never. I'll make sure to link all your links in the description, Gil. It's always a pleasure chatting with you. Thanks everybody for listening to this episode of Out of the Blank. Stay tuned for our next episode.